was recorded from.
Beginning on Daf, the final Daf in Mesechta Kesuvos Daf Kuf Yud Beis. Begin on the second line down on the top of the Amud. The Gemara continues on the theme discussing the shvach of the peiros of Eretz Yisrael. Shir corresponds because in the Cheskel turned on Daf Achaim. Shir joining today's Daf. Something we're discussing today's final Daf in Mesechta Kesuvos are the Avrahams counts of the large abundance of chol v'dvash in Eretz Yisrael. The bracha of Eretz Yisrael, that one saw of seed can produce 50,000 kur, and the proof to this amount from Kesuvos Daf, how much that in Mitzrayim, the city of Tzayan was able to produce. Sabi Yehuda Chamish, showing that one saw in Yehuda was able to produce 5 saw of different types of flour. The pasuk considers Eretz Yisrael Eretz HaTzvi, and two interpretations are given, either because just like the tzvi, the deer, the hide does not contain its skin, so too Eretz Yisrael cannot contain its peiros because of the abundance, or because just like a deer is very swift, so too the peiros of Eretz Yisrael is very swift to produce. So we begin the current Daf. We had mentioned the previous Daf regarding Eretz Yisrael's chol v'dvash, that they witnessed goats dripping milk while eating figs dripping with honey. That's literally flowing milk and honey. And how much of the area did they see was flowing this area? Now the Gemara continues on the second line down at the top of Kuf Yud Beis. These three tzaddikim, iklo lahu astro, they came to a certain place, and aisu kameyu afraska, they brought them a peach. Now the keilpas kfar hinay, it was as large as a frying pan of the village of Hinay. Now the ilpas kfar hinay kamahav, and the Gemara says, how large is this frying pan of this village of Hinay? It's hay saw, 5 saw, which is a large measurement, and that's how big the fruit was. Now achlu shlish, they only ate a third of this peach. They have kiddush shlish, and they were mafker a third of it, but Naslam they behemten shlish, and they gave another third of it in front of the animals again to show you how great was the produce of Eretz Yisrael. Now the Shana, Ikla Rebbe Lazar Lahasan. At the end of the year, Rebbe Lazar came over there, and they brought in front of him the peiros, enough to be yodei, and he was holding it in his hand, meaning he found it to be smaller that you could hold it in one hand. And he said, like the pasuk says in Tehillim, Edet Peri'ilim Alecha, the fruits of the land are going to soul, Meirah, or from they're getting ruined, Meirah as Yeshviva, from the wickedness of those who settle on it, meaning that the reason why the peiros are not the way it used to be is because of the sins of the people. Shuman Levi, the Gemara was in another story, Iklu L'Gavla, he went to the place called Gavla, and Chazinu Lahanu Ketufi, he saw these clusters, they were like calves. Amr says, "Oy, a golem ben akfanim." There's calves between the grapevines. Amr, they said to him, "That's not calves. That's not that cows. Ketuvin, those are clusters of grapes." Amr says, "Eretz, achnisu perisayich. Land, bring in, gather in your peiros. Meaning, don't produce this type of peiros. Lami at meitzia perisayich. For whom are you taking out such peiros? Laravayim halalu, for these Arabs she'amdu aleinu b'chadasenu, that they're standing on us because of our sins." Meaning, it's our enemies that are getting this produce. So Lashana, at the end of the year, Ikla Reb Chia Lahasam. Chia came to the same place of Gavla. Chazin Dabakamakiza, he saw that the clusters were like goats, meaning they were smaller than calves. Amar, he said, Izim bin Akvanim, there's goats between the grapevines. Amar, they said to him, Zil, leave, don't do to us like your colleague did, that he said that it shouldn't produce and never got smaller, and you're going to say that it shouldn't be even like goats, it's going to get even smaller. Therefore, leave and don't give us your klala. In the blessings of Eretz Yisrael, meaning when the year is blessed, so then a base saw, a field that's seeded with one saw of seed, is oisa. It makes the base saw is oisa chameshes ribu kurim. It makes an amount of 50,000 kur. A ribu is 10,000. 5 10,000s is 50,000 kur. And the Gemara explains that we learned this out from the place called Tzayan to Eretz Yisrael. Because b'yeshivasa shel Tzayan, in the settled area of Tzayan, you have a base saw that's Isa Shivim Kurim. A seed that's planted in the area of a base saw would make 70 kur. The time like when the Brisa. Amr Meir says, Anita Isa Vikat Beit Shan. He says, I saw in the valley of Beit Shan, which is from other lands, that a base saw Isa Shivim Kurim. That an area of a saw will make 70 kur. Now, says, now there's no greater land from all the lands of the world. More than Egypt. Because it says a passing Bereshis, Kigan Hashem Keretz Mitzrayim. Like the garden of Hashem, meaning Gan Eden, was compared to the land of Mitzrayim. Now, since in other lands, like we found in Beit Shan, there is places that it could produce 70 kur for sure in the land of Mitzrayim, because there's no greater land than all the Mitzrayim, than the Mitzrayim. Now, there's no greater part of Mitzrayim, Yosem Mitzrayim more than Tzayim, because they have Marba Malachim. That's where they would bring up the Egyptian kings. It was a place of nobility. That's like it says a person in Yeshaya, Kihayu B'Tzayan Sarav, which actually is referring to that the Jewish kings, they're deriding them. It's saying that they rebelled against HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they relied on the Egyptian kings, and the princes and the kings of the Jews were always sent to Tzayan, that's where the Egyptian kings were, and they went there to bring gifts. So there's no greater part of Mitzrayim than Tzayan. Now, there's no rockier terrain in all of Eretz Yisrael than that of Hebron. That's why they bury the dead over there, because it's not a great place to plant. And even so, Hebron is built better, 7 times more better land than Tzayin. Because it says a pasuk, Hebron, it says a Hebron, it says in Bamidbar, Hebron was built 7 years before Tzayin of Mitzrayim. Now the Gemara explains, my Nibnasa. What does it mean it was built? If you say it literally was built 7 years before, how's that possible? Is it really true that a person is going to build a house for his younger son, which Canaan was from the younger sons of Ham, before he's going to build for his older son, which is Mitzrayim, like it says in Pasuk, B'nei Ham, or we have in this week's parasha, where we're talking about the sons of Noach, B'nei Ham, is Chush, U'Mitzrayim, U'Fut U'Chanan. Mitzrayim is an older son than Canaan. Why would he build 7 years before for a younger son than an older son? Rather, no, of course he didn't build for the younger son. Rather, Shemavuna, it's like built, meaning it's better quality, al achas meshem v'tzayin, not 7 years, but like 7-fold over that of tzayin. So you see that 7 times better than the 70 kur of Mitzrayim is what Hebron is, which that takes us to a number of 490. Now, and when did we say this? Is by rocky area like Hebron. But if let's say it's not rocky terrain, then you have to add on a little bit more to make it chamesh meya, to make it not just 490 kur, which is 7 times 70, but rather to take it to 500. Now, we have one more part of this equation. And just like this chart that we have over here, just to illustrate for the visual, that when do we say this? Is when there's no blessing. When there's a blessing in the year. It says in the pasuk, it says that Yitzchak planted in the land in that year, and it says over there that he had meya sha'arim, which is 100-fold more than the rest of the year. He was blessed 100-fold. So if we're saying that Tzayin, and how do we know Tzayin? Because we saw in Beit Shan that one saw produced 70 kur. And if somewhere else, for sure Mitzrayim. And Mitzrayim, the best place is Tzayin. So for sure Tzayin would produce 70 kur. And Hebron, which we're saying is 7 times better than Tzayin, so that's 7 times 70 is 490. And that's in the rocky terrain like Hebron. And if it's not rocky, it's for sure going to do at least 10 more. It's going to make 500 kur. And when it's a blessed year, it says regarding Yitzchak that he had meya sha'arim 100 times more than what it usually produces. So what's 500 times 100 is 50,000. That's the source that we see that in Eretz Yisrael, one saw could produce 50,000 kur of produce. Trying to learn the Brisa, continuing on the steam, Amr Yisi says, Sab Yehuda, one saw of wheat in Yehuda that was harvested, that it actually produces 5 saw of flour. How so? So it produces saw kemath, saw of regular flour, which that's the thin dust that comes out from the sifter, that the wheat is grinded in a grinder, in the mill of beans, and it doesn't get ground so thin, and the sifter takes out the flour, and it keeps the fine flour, and you put back into the sifter, what was in the sifter, you put it back into the grinder. So you have first a regular flour, then you have saw silas, you have the fine flour, you have saw subin, then you have the bran from the initial pounding, that when they make it moist, the wheat for the flour, they grind it in the grinder, So you have over there the bran, and then you have some morsin, which is the bran from the grinding that comes out at the end. That's the coarse bran. And you have a saw kuburya, which is coarse flour, which is flour that's not so fine that they make the black bread from. Those are the 5 types of flour that are produced from 1 saw of wheat. I think we're continuing with some stories. This with a Sadducee, who they don't believe in, they claim not to believe in the oral law. Oh, you know, it's very appropriate that you praise your land because my father left me over 1 saw of land in Eretz Yisrael, and from this little tract of land, from there I get oil, from there I get wine, from there I get grain, from there I get beans, from there my flock, my cattle graze. In other words, there's so much that I get from that small little area of land. So the Gemara continues, I'm like, Hu bar Amara, bar Ar de Yisrael. There was an Amori, before the Jews came to Eretz Yisrael, one of the 7 nations was the Amori, and they knew the land very well. So when the Jew was coming, Jews were just coming into Eretz Yisrael, so he said to those, to that Jew, says, Hi Tulsa, the Kaima Gud the Ardana. That palm tree that's at the edge of the Jordan River, Kama Gedirisimana, how many days did you harvest from it? Amalei Shitin Kuri, he says 60 Kur. Oh, Amalei said to him, Akati lo Elisuba, you barely came into the land, and Achariv tu, you already ruined it? Anan Mei ve'esem Kuri havagajimna, we used to get 120 Kur from that 1 palm tree. So the Yiddah said to him, he says, I only told you from 1 side of the land. I didn't tell you from the other side. I mean, it really was that, don't worry, if we come into Tom's River, it doesn't mean we're ruining, we only got half of it, we're not done yet. So Rabbi Chizah says, my dad said, wasn't it a pasuk in Yirmiyah? It says, Ve'etin loch eretz kamna, I'm going to give you a desirable land, nachlas tzvi, an inheritance of a deer. Loma eretz Yisrael nimshal tzvi, why is the land of Israel compared to a deer? So Lemdecha is coming to tell you, mat tzvi zeh, just like this deer, ein oyrei machzik b'sareh. The hide cannot contain its flesh, because after it's skinned, the hide shrivels up, and you almost like you wouldn't be able to stretch it to cover the body. After it's also the land of Israel, ein machzik b'sareh, it really doesn't contain its produce. It makes so much produce until there's no room where to even store it. Or another interpretation, mat tzvi zeh, just like this deer, kal mikol hachayis, it's the swifter, it's the fast, the lightest from all the wild animals. After it's also the land of Israel, it's lighter than all the lands, to go ahead and produce its payers. Now, but then you would say, just like this deer, kal, yeah, it's very light, it's very swift, but it doesn't have fatty meat. After it's also the land of Israel, kal, yeah, maybe it's quick to produce, but its fruits are not fatty. Tamalem has a teaching the pasuk, Zavas chalav advash, a land that's flowing milk and honey, which is shmeina mechalav, fattier than milk, umetukum advash, and sweeter than honey, other payers in Eretz Yisrael. Ramah says Rabbi Lazar, Kebesalk la'ardi Eretz Yisrael, when he made Aliyah, when he came up to Eretz Yisrael, Amar says, Palti li machada. I was saved of one of them from the curses that are mentioned in the pasuk. Kisamchu, when they gave him smich, when they ordained him as a rabbi, Amar says, Patli metarti, I was saved from 2 of the curses. And Kesuvos Daf, when he was then placed into the secret council of those who were involved in making the Ibriya, to make the intercalation of the year, Amar says, Patli metlas, I was saved from the 3rd curse. What are these 3 curses? It says the pasuk in Yecheskel. Pasuk says, V'risa yodi el hanavim hachezim shav v'goyim. It says, my hand was to the prophets that see false, etc., and those who do this divination of lies. Beside Ami lo yiyu, and the secret of my people are not going to be. I mean, he's talking about those who will not merit because of their falsehood. Now, when it says beside Ami lo yiyu, what secret is that? Is that Sod Ibr? That's the secret of how to be able to make an Ibriya. So that's a curse that he was saved from, number 3. Ubiksav basis, so like you say, when it says in the writing of the Jewish people, are not going to be written. What does that mean? It's a smicha. When he gets the ksav of the smicha, he gets ordained. He says that's a curse, and that he was saved from 2nd. And it says adnas yisol levo, to the land of the Jews, they're not going to come. That's kamash. That's literally, that was the first thing about meriting to go to Eretz Yisrael. So again, when he got to these 3 things, he said it was saved from these 3 curses in the Sefer Yecheskel. The Gemara ends off, Reb Zera, Kabasol Eretz Yisrael, when he would go up, when he went up to Eretz Yisrael, La'ashkach Mavra Lamavra. Now, when he came to cross over, he didn't find a bridge, didn't find a boat to cross over the river. So, Nakad b'mitzra b'kavra. Like Rashi tells us, there are certain places that there's no bridges. So what they do is they throw a piece of wood over the width of the river, from one end to the other end, and it's not wide enough to go on, only if you hold on with your hands to a rope that's stretched out above it, tied on to the two ends with two pegs, one on one side, one on the other side, on the two sides of the river. So he went and he walked over this, like home rings, getting across to the other side on this narrow board. Tzduki said there was a tzduki that said to him, "Amma Paziza, this tumultuous, this confounded people, the kadmisu pamaychul adnaychu, that your mouth came before your ears." Meaning you started off as a nation very bahul, very overwhelmed, very, very quick and swift, because you said nasa v'nishma. You said we're going to do. Your mouth came before your ears before you heard what you're going to do. Like they're too hasty people. And he says, "Akati you're still in your hastiness. That you're doing something that it's not time yet. I mean, you're waiting. You can't wait an hour for the boat to come or whatever this and that you're crossing over on this board that you have to walk over with a rope." So Amalei said to him, a place where Moshe and they didn't merit to go into. I know who said I'm going to merit? I have to take the moment right now, because who knows what's going to happen if Moshe and Aaron didn't merit? Who said I'm going to merit? Gemara tells us famously, Reb Abba Menashe Kepe de Akur. Reb Abba would kiss the Kepe of Akur. Either it means the corals, or it means the rocks, which basically explains because Akur had part of it was in Eretz Yisrael. When he came there, he would kiss the rocks. Chanina Mesakin Masculine. Chanina, interesting. What he would do would be he would actually smooth out the unflat roads because of his endearment to the land. It was so dear to him. He didn't want anyone to be upset when he's walking or driving that he should trip over anything. So he would smooth out the roads that no one should stumble, that it shouldn't be anyone getting upset. So Reb Ami Rabasi, as you tend to the base, they would get up from the sun to the shade and from the shade to the sun. Meaning, when the sun reached the place that they were sitting and learning, and the sun was beating down on them, they would get up and sit in the shady area. And when it was cold, they would get up from the shade and sit in the sun, so that they shouldn't complain about what it means to live in Eretz Yisrael, which I remember once seeing a picture that someone once had on the AC unit, that this was the AC of Rabbi Rabasi, meaning in Eretz Yisrael, not to be upset that it's so hot. You don't want to be in the state that you're uncomfortable, because no one wants to complain about living in Eretz Yisrael. So that's this idea that they would do whatever it is to be in the state that it's not uncomfortable. He would roll around in its dust of Eretz Yisrael. Like it says the pasuk in Tehillim, because your servants, they desire her stones, and its earth finds favor by them. Now, as Taisa says, once we're talking about the blessing of the world to come, which is the Ma'aseh Mashiach, we're talking about how great Eretz Yisrael is going to be. So therefore, we mentioned this next idea also. The generation when Mashiach ben David is going to come, which should come very speedily in our days, kategoria. So there's going to be many prosecutions and those who are saying negative things, the Talmid Chacham on Talmudic scholars. You can read the Talmid Shmuel. When he said in front of Shmuel, he said more. He said tziruf achat tziruf. It's going to be decrees on top of decrees. Because Shanam says a pasuk in Yeshaya, v'oidba asiriya, and there's also going to be a 10th, meaning 9 out of the 10 portions are going to be decimated, they're going to be lost, and there's going to be left but a 10th, and we had something like this with the Holocaust, and then again, it's also going to be consumed, which Tana used to be the Torah Bryce, and Bezuze, it's going to be plundered, and Bezuze di Bezuze, that's going to be plundering after the plunder. Taisa says, of course, we always want to end on a good note, so we say over here this next idea, and we don't say it previously, which when we're talking about all those things, so that we can end on a nice note. He says, in the future is going to be that all those trees that don't produce fruit are sheyitinu peiros in Eretz Yisrael, that they're going to produce fruits. Shlomo says the pasuk in Yoel, ki eitz nasa period, because the tree carries its fruits. Te'ena v'gefen, the fig tree and the grapevine, they give their strength, like Rashi explains. And the fact that it says Te'ena and Gefen give their strength, so that already mentioned a fruit tree. So when you're saying Ki Eitz Nasa Period, that the tree is going to give its pears, it's referring even to a barren tree that doesn't produce fruits, that it also in the future will produce fruits. Hadnalav Shnei the Yoni Gezeres, which I returned to you, the 13th paragraph of Kesuvos, Paragraph Shnei the Yoni Gezeres, which spoke about the Zionist for the wife and the Ksuba, or Slikla Mesechtas Kesuvos, and we have concluded Mesechtas Kesuvos. Thank you, Torah, anytime. I'm just gonna make the Hadron. We have some time anyway. It's not the Hadron. I don't get a chance to make Hadron so often, so I usually just go next. So next to the Hadron. Hadron Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Hadron Chalon. Daiden Log Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Daiden Chalon. Of course, whoever wants to say it along can say it along also. Lens Neshma Nach Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Las Neshma Non Lamadan V'Amanam Dasim. Hadron Log Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Hadron Chalon. Daiden Log Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Daiden Chalon. Las Neshma Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Las Non Lamadan Dasim. Hadron Log Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Hadron Chalon. Daiden Log Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Daiden Chalon. Las Neshma Mesechtas Kesuvos v'Las Non Lamadan Dasim. Jetzt mal nachher der neue noch sehen steht raus und sind weil mazar so immer mal ba khanin ba papa roma papa nach papa khaba papa mal papa rab papa sokh papa abna papa da papa harabna der neue ist der ist das befinden wir ist am gewesen auf eine kolonne nach mit Zeit zu eine mit Zeit zusammen gewesen kolonne geschmack und diese Sache mal wird der mit der Sache kiloim hili bis am khukher la mal ebe shloim la ashkar bekdaf kvam son bar khad la nam ben khukher mein salvat moide menach von nachher der neue leute was in samt geken mir bis mit bei samt geken mir schon an mashkim und der der mashkim beim betel man mel und man kann sagen wenn man kann sagen andere Leute wenn Leute andere Leute machen aber wenn wir schach hast nicht mehr was darum zu reden bei schach das hast du mit man ja doch jetzt mal nachher der like chemische also tonu was eine Set super schas karten Kinder sein und lassen und haben Set das war mal gehen was ein Blumen lassen das schon was der kein es Gott besonders das haben Schus Kalaten am Samid kham yam lanu zareinu shloy tamash atel medinu mit Israelu bezer zareinu adil es kein bon bis Allah khatan khaisa beshaf maqash malacha aketses is gaza kibir bi mafre zibul shna isqaim ayfim mit shloy qabla adoy nevar shol
That is over, no?
Right.